Hello everyone. Today we will talk about selecting the right partner in romantic relationships. It's another big and complicated topic that I'm really excited to unpack together with you. A couple years ago, a close friend of mine was sharing her experiences from a life coaching session that she attended at the time. She articulated a framework that the instructor introduced to the team. It was a framework about having, doing, and being. I didn't know anything about this framework, but apparently it was a famous one, frequently used for describing our personal journeys as individuals. It has implications on the individual actualization, but it also has implications in the way that we can frame our relationships. Let's focus on the framework first. So, what the framework tells us is really that step by step evolution in our journey for happiness. So, usually we start for chasing things, so we have particular things to be able to do particular things so that we can achieve a desired state of being. One clear example of this might be we would like to have money so that we can travel, so that we can be happy with all the travel that we have done. And this is actually a nicely articulation of the ladders that we have to climb to be able to really find peace at that ultimate state of being. The implication of this on the relationship side is actually quite a nice reflection of the same journey that we have been going through on the personal side. When we look into the history of the relationships in the good old days, when we look into marriages, I think it was mostly people combining their house together, like different families combining their wealth together so they can do better and combined things. So I think when I look into the evolution of our partnerships, at least today we are in a better situation, that at least we graduated from only looking into house to mostly looking into what the other person does. It's definitely a step in the evolution, which is wonderful to celebrate. But again, when we only look into the other party in terms of what they have, what they can bring into the relationship, and what they do, those are really like little small snapshots in the long-term game of life that we are all in. And definitely, given the temporary nature of the have and do dimensions, if we only evaluate our relationships or partners within those two pillars, that might not really reflect the healthy relationships that we strive to have, or the long-term dimension of our lives. Because let's acknowledge, life is quite unpredictable. If we only optimize for what the other person has or what the other person does, those two things can change pretty quickly. What do I mean by that? There could be a natural disaster and you can definitely lose everything that you have. Then the question is, are you into this for the longer term, and do you have enough trust in the other person to build and to have all the things together once again? In terms of doing, probably you have heard quite a lot of stories where people have changed identities in terms of what they do in their lives. Well, if you are into a relationship because that particular person has a high status in the society, like they are CEO of a particular company, and one particular day something magically happens and they're not able to do that particular service in the society, what does that mean for the relationship that you optimize for? All nice questions to ask, which is really more of an invitation for us to really consider the last stage of the evolution, which is like, are you really optimizing the relationship for who the other person is? optimizing for how you feel with the existence of the other person, how the other person's presence is really impacting you as an individual, as a being. And I think these are all important questions to ask, especially in the world that we operate in. We are mostly digital and turning out to be even more digital with the impact of the pandemic that we are going through. And that only makes some of these frameworks that we think about even more visible. What do I mean by that? When we look into, for example, dating applications that are dominant in the market today, most of them are really optimizing for surface level questions that only starts with hows and do's, like how many qualifications that you have, what do you do with your life, what kind of hobbies you have. And of course, to be able to come to a being, you need to start from some external reflections of the being in the form of what you have or what you do. So I'm not really underestimating the external reflections of the identity. But I think the critical thing that I'm trying to highlight here is really they are pointers or signals for the underlying presence that we should be looking for in the presence of a relationship, in the presence of another person. And sometimes focusing too much on the measurable things that are quite visible externally, it can really prime us in some certain dimensions that we might really neglect the importance of that state of being dimension or matching in that being space, in that love space. Because all other dimensions are easier to measure. Most of the technological tools are there. They are really trying to measure the things that are easy to identify in terms of numbers, which doesn't necessarily mean that those are the most important metrics if we are really looking for a soul companion, someone who is going to be in this journey with you for the long term. Because that can only happen once you connect with someone else at the heart space, with your aura, with your presence. And although it can have implications in terms of what you do and what you have and how much things that you share, that particular heart space connection usually is not something that you can literally put into classical to-dos and must-haves. It's just an silent knowing space that you only feel. And in that sense, it's actually mostly silence. If there's a metric to measure, maybe the right metric is really, can you feel at ease, at peace with someone's being, with someone's presence? I think those are really important questions to ask at first, but also as a complementary to some of the other dimensions that you might be looking for in terms of what you have and what they do. When I was thinking about this, another framework actually I think nicely aligned with the story that I'm trying to articulate here. And it's the story about why we do things, then how we are going to do things, and what we are going to do to get there. So those are three major questions that we usually ask for any critical decision in life. And not so sure whether Nietzsche had this in mind when he was saying his famous quote, but I really get some inspiration from Nietzsche's famous saying about the importance of why. He says, "Who he has a strong enough why can bear almost any how." Why this is important. I think it's really important because if we can look into the framework that we use for having, doing, and being, connecting with someone at the being level is pretty similar to having a very strong why that can give you enough motivation, inspiration, and dedication to overcome all the challenges about how we are going to overcome some of the do's together, or how we are going to overcome some of the must-haves together. And that's an easier path to optimize because the grounding factor happens to me at the most core essence that really brings the individuals together at their being, at their love. And that's a very rare space to meet, but if that magically happens, the power of that connection has actually the strength to overcome most of the challenges about hows and what's. And if we don't have that connection, if we only optimize for haves and to-dos, then it's always going to be us pushing and striving for the huge gap at the being level. And we see quite a lot of examples of this in the world today. Like people literally get into commitments with the assumption that at one point in the future, the other person will change and they will connect at the being level. And we also know that that never works. Because the more that you really assume the other person is going to change just because you are pushing for it, it just literally not really makes it even possible or feasible because you don't really connect with the other person at the being level. It's always like a less powerful force trying to change a more powerful nature, and it never works that way. Change should happen when it's supposed to happen, only with the preference of the individuals, and that only comes with love if it's supposed to happen. So in that manner, I think if we have to optimize for, it might be better to optimize for connection at the heart level, connection at the being level, so we have enough love, we have enough power, we have enough stamina to go through all the challenges that life might throw at us. We can come up with different ways of thinking about how we are going to make things together, what we are going to do together, because there's a more powerful strength behind the unity of the two individuals, their presence together, their love together. And that's actually the best thing to optimize for. All else are really little small pieces along the journey that really signals us what we need to forgive, release, so that we can come closer to love in every dimension in our lives. It's not about how much we have. It's not about what we do at this particular point in our lives. It's all about who we are at the core. And it's about connecting with another individual at that pure essence. I recently discovered an Irish poet who I really like very much. And he actually has a particular saying about love, the importance of love, which is a very nice summary of what I'm trying to articulate here. So I will share that with you right now. It's strangely ironic that the world loves power and possessions. You can be very powerful in this world, be admired by everyone, have endless possessions, a lovely family, success in your work, and have everything the world can give. But behind it all, you can be completely lost and miserable. If you have everything the world has to offer you, but you do not have love, then you are poorest of the poorest of the poor. Every human heart hungers for love. If you don't have the warmth of love in your heart, there is no possibility for real celebration or enjoyment, no matter how hard, competent, self-assured, or respected you are. no matter what you think of yourself or what others think of you. The only thing that you deeply long for is love, no matter where you are, who you are, what you are, or what kind of journey you're in. We all need love. Isn't it beautiful? Yes. We all need love. And I hope this really gives us some inspiration to choose love if we have to optimize for something. If we can really choose love, connect with another individual at that being space, at that heart space, that can, I think, give us a very strong why, the strongest why that we as human beings can have in this world, so that with that strong why, with the power of love, we can overcome all of the hows and what's together. I think it's really possible. And I think we just have to trust the innate power that we have in our hearts to show us the right path. Thank you all. That's all for today. See you next time.